Sorry about the old-fashioned techniques. I am Carol McFadden, not Andrew Jones. Unfortunately, my colleague Andrew couldn't be here today. He's contracted chicken pox for the first time in his life. I just want to talk to you about the British Council's role and our work internationally, and how I hope that we can start to develop a relationship with some of the artists and organizations that are present today. I'll just start by giving you a little bit of background as to the team in London. I'm Carol McFadden. I'm one of 4 advisors in the drama and dance department. I'll just very quickly run down the names of my colleagues. Although this presentation will be put up, I think, on the website, and also if anyone wants to leave me with their email address, I'll be very happy to email you a copy of it next week. But head of the team is Brendan Griggs, and Brendan focuses really on policy matters for the department. My colleague Andrew Jones, another advisor, his remit is Russia and North Europe, Southeast Europe, the USA and Canada. My other colleague is Kathy Gomez. Kathy looks after the Gulf countries, part of the Middle East. She also looks after India and Sri Lanka, Latin America, and Central and South Asia. I'm looking after the other part of the Middle East, which goes under the heading the Near East and North Africa. And these are the countries of Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Algeria, Morocco, Palestine, and Libya. And I'm pretty certain I've left out a few, and my colleague Abdul Hamid from Syria in the audience can correct me at some point. I also look after China and Hong Kong and East Asia. And I'm also, for the last 2 years, taking the lead in the British Council Arts Group for the Unlimited programme. So I've been working very closely with the London 2012 team and the Arts Councils in the UK in delivering the Unlimited International programme, which is the programme of UK and international artists working together to create new collaborations. We have a new colleague joining the team. He's been in the team a week. He is here this week, and that's Ben Evans. Ben, some of you probably know, he is at the Oval Theatre in London. He's joined the team for 1 year, covering a colleague's maternity cover. We're delighted to welcome Ben. He comes with an extensive knowledge of Africa, and in fact, we will be looking at our programs there over the next couple of years. That's the team. I'm going to now focus a little bit on the British Council. I'm not sure if people here in the room already have a relationship with us or would like to, but let me just tell you a little bit of potted history. The organisation was actually founded in 1934 by a collective of interest from government departments, industry, the arts and science, to actively promote an understanding of Britain across the world. In 2009, we celebrated our 75th year, and 77 years later, this year, we have 110 countries and 220 offices across that range of countries. We are the UK's major cultural relations organisation. We exist to build, sorry, I do have to read from notes, I'm afraid, because I've been bounced into this at short notice. We exist to build trust between the UK and countries and people and win lifelong friends for Britain. And we do this through the 4 major pillars of our activity. one being the arts, another being science, education, and governance. We have a wide spectrum of activity, which includes education, promotion at all levels, creativity of every kind through our arts and science programs, governance training, human rights projects, sports projects, and education for reform and training. So it's a very, very wide brief, and I want to focus today on the work of Arts Group. We're not a funding body, so we're not like the Arts Council. The Arts Council funds the creation of new work, and the British Council very much works with the finished product. We also work with you as artists. We like to develop a relationship with you. So we're not only interested in your work, but we're interested in your future plans. We're also interested in people who are excellent at workshops, and I'm also interested in people who are very interesting and passionate about their work to talk at talks, conferences, and various other forums that we put on globally. We aim to deliver mutual benefits through our programs and projects. Both the UK and the international partners, we want both to derive benefit from it. And perhaps the best way to illustrate this is through our work in the Near East and North Africa. Over the last couple of years, we've been working on developing a new generation of playwrights. And working with the Royal Court in London, we have, over a 3 or 4 year journey, worked with a group of 21 playwrights, which eventually saw a programme of readings at the Royal Court in London. Just recently, the Royal Court invited 5 of those playwrights to make a 15-minute play in response to the Arab Spring, and so that work was performed at the Royal Court recently. I've also been working in the region on the contemporary dance agenda. There are some wonderful artists in the region. They're all working in isolation. We also have some dancers who are now festival directors and have become entrepreneurial. And we have worked with them also in touring and workshops and residencies. And last year, Eckhart Thiemann, who works in this country, curated a program for the Birmingham International Dance Festival. We've also had Arab work in the Woking Dance Festival, and also through our work in sending delegations to the region, we had a Tunisian play that was part of the London International Festival of Theatre in London. So some mutuality is key to the work we do in that particular region and will continue to be so. Our global arts team, I've talked about the staff in the London office, but in our 110 countries overseas, we have arts teams as well. And we work very much together. My responsibility in London is to go to events like this, to see high quality work, to recommend across the team for our programs globally, but also to network with key individuals. Because, as I said, we're not just interested in performance, we're interested in workshops and talks, and we're interested actually in putting artists like yourselves together with international artists and hopefully seeding collaborations at some point in the future. That is very much part of our remit as well. Our staff on the ground are invaluable because they are talking to local artists. They know what the local scene is like. They know what sort of training is required. And together we have those conversations and we try and together develop projects which run over 1, 2, 3, and 4 years. So we like to build projects organically from a pilot. We like to grow it. And then clearly we like to see mutuality as a part of that as well. In Arts Group, our large-scale program goes under the title New Work, New Audiences, which could mean a variety of things. But to us, it means that we're looking for high-quality work with new creative ideas. This could be the way you put the work together. It could also be about the themes of the work, the things that you're talking about. It also could be the type of work, whether it's interactive theatre, whether it's site-specific theatre, whether it's installation, new writing. With that type of work and that type of engagement, what we hope to do is to grow and develop new audiences internationally for high-quality British art. So that's what we're all about. The geographical priorities, that's very, very fluid. We do respond to world affairs, and in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, Western Europe has become less of a priority for the British Council in terms of our art, simply because a lot of international promoters from Western Europe travel very easily to the UK, and they know the scene here very well. But our focus at the moment is the Islamic world. It's also China, it's also India and Sub-Saharan Africa. And I mentioned earlier that Ben, we're delighted to welcome Ben, who's bringing an extensive knowledge of work in Africa into the department, because that will be our focus for the next couple of years. I'm also working on a big project in China for 2012 called UK Now, and also there will be a major festival in Brazil towards the end of 2012 and early 2013, and this is in celebration of the next Olympic Games heading to Brazil, so it's actually working on an arts program in the lead up too. So if anyone is interested in those particular parts of the world, has contacts already, then please get in touch with me, and I can be the conduit to reach our other team members. We also, as an organisation, really support sustainable theatre. We have our own agenda, and we're trying to build meaningful programmes around the world as part of New Work, New Audiences. But it is also perfectly acceptable for you as artists if after Decibel, some of our international delegates are interested in your work, please, let's still have a conversation about that. Because sometimes your ideas, your new projects, or that partner that you're working with might be someone that we would like to get to know a little bit better. It might also be a project that we can find a route in to some of our existing arts projects. So please, I think, the door is open to have conversations and start a relationship with you and your specific areas of interest. I talked about the 4 major pillars of our work: arts, education, governance, and English. And the arts doesn't work alone in the organisation. We try to find synergies across the rest of our programmes. For example, our governance team based here in Manchester already work with the disability agenda with various governments and organisations across the world. So my being here and seeing some of the high quality work this week in that particular sector, plus my knowledge from being part of Unlimited, my mission, for want of a better word, is to obviously have those connections with the governance team and to see where we can position high quality art into some of those large scale projects, as well as individual artists to be part of any panels, because I really do think artists, you have a very close engagement with your art form. You've probably done quite extensive research into your work. And I really do think that artists have a very strong place at those discussion panels, along with politicians and along with people from ministerial organisations. I personally believe that live performance work can be absolutely inspirational. I think it can change you as a person. I've gone in to see a piece of work with an opinion, and I've come out and completely changed my opinion. And I think that works internationally as well. 2 years ago, when I was a member of the audience, like yourself, I saw a couple of pieces of work which I suggested to colleagues in Syria and Egypt. The piece was No Idea. And this piece eventually toured to those countries. And as a result of that, our partner in Syria is here as a delegate this week, because she's very interested in having a conference or panel in the future in the Arab world, bringing artists to the table to talk about disability and government and democracy. So I think that's just very important to know, that conversations and ideas that come up this week can absolutely be part of our bigger projects. The same is true for the science agenda, pieces that are talking about science. We try very hard to position those in programs and try to have artists as part of that agenda. We also have a sports team in the British Council, and I personally see a lot of synergy between the discipline that sportsmen and sportswomen have and the discipline that contemporary dancers have. And yet we have in the sports fraternity lots of fantastic role models who are disabled, but we don't seem to have the same role models in the dance sector. And so I think this is something that the British Council is very interested in, having sports people and artists together on the same panel and to get those discussions going. I'd like to just take you off some of the policy now. I really just would like to illustrate the point I made about new work, new audiences. It's very timely because 2 weeks ago, the drama and dance team concluded its Edinburgh showcase. And the showcase has been happening now for 12 years. It's part of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And basically, we select between 24 and 30 pieces of high quality art and invite international promoters and delegates to Edinburgh to see the work. This year, we had 260 delegates from across the world, from as far afield as South America, China, Russia, Africa. And also, during the course of the week, we have morning sessions to contextualize the work. This was a specially created program of work, showcasing new creative ideas, new writing, new themes, interesting work that in our cultural relations mission will get people talking, gives us an opportunity to have a talk, a panel discussion, invite people along and position art central stage of that. We also had the contextual sessions, which were looking at programming. They were looking at different models of producing. We had a session on the digital offer, how digital work is making a very big impact in marketing and in the actual creative ideas of the work. And we also had sessions on Decibel and on the Unlimited program. So we're very hopeful, that a lot of those promoters present will go back and be inviting some of those companies to perform at their festival or at their venue. This year, Heitin Patel, who showed a piece of work 2 years ago in Decibel, it was not quite ready, but 2 years down the line, Heitin was part of our Edinburgh showcase. And I'm delighted to say that there are promoters very interested in his work. And he's also an excellent speaker. So there are very strong possibilities for that. We didn't have any work from the disabled sector this year because the work we wanted to invite, unfortunately, the timing didn't quite work. But I just wanted you to know that we had extended invitations to various artists working in that particular sector. And hopefully some of the work we see here this week, those artists, my colleagues and I, will track and monitor over the next 2 years, and hopefully when the showcase comes round again in 2013, some of this excellent work will be included. I do want to repeat that it's not just about the performance. It's about interacting with you as artists, interacting with people who are representing an organization. That's equally important to us because it's not just about showcasing work. Our work is about so much more. It's about showcasing and cultural relations, which takes many forms. I want to just talk now a little bit about international markets. We have dissected them into three. The developed markets, which would be the developed markets in America, Canada, parts of East Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. The developing markets, and these would be, parts of East Asia, parts of Africa, and the undeveloped markets where there is very little arts activity, but we're trying to look at ways of introducing the arts, maybe through English language teaching, which is something the British Council rolls out worldwide. When you are talking to international promoters, I would say, it's very uncomfortable talking about, well, can you afford us? How much are you going to pay? How is your organization set up financially? But it is always good, I think, having a reality check, just to make sure that some of the economies, if you're talking to people from Azerbaijan, for example, they may not have any money to offset any of your touring costs at all. So you do have to make decisions and be realistic. I would say to you, again, always have a conversation with the British Council in London, because our geographical priorities are constantly changing. And we're very skilled at wheedling money out of other pockets and other schemes. And just recently this week, it was brought to our attention that the Overseas Development Administration has some money that we might be able to access for our arts program. So, it's just a very good ploy to always speak to us when you get an invitation. And when you get it, speak to us at a very early stage, because we might need some time to investigate sources of funding, but we might also need to take some time to see if there are other large-scale projects that we can make your work part of. I'm not sure, Nikki, how many promoters we have this week at Decibel.
She's going to be about 350 plus, yeah.
International?
Oh, international maybe about 25 to 30 at least.
Well, that's an increased number. That's a wonderful number. In our opinion, in our experience in Edinburgh, promoters like to talk about the work, but they might not want to be drawn to give a comment on what they thought about your work right now. And I think you should allow them a bit of space to have a think. And I certainly think, by the end of the week, when they've seen a range of work before them, then, they will be quite open. And if there is work that they want to book, then that's when they generally do it. I would say that after Decibel is over, I think it's very important that you email people that you've spoken to this week and remind them about you and your work. And refer them to your websites where they can see a little bit more about your work and other pieces of work that you've done in the past. I can tell you a little bit about the US circuit. We have found that one of the wealthiest touring circuits in the US is the university circuit. Apart from being quite wealthy and being able to afford to host you, by its very nature, they have a young student audience. And they do tend to talk to each other, and over the last 5 or 6 years, we at the British Council have seen much more of a touring circuit through the university system. So that's something that you should be aware of. Also, the Australian touring circuit, we do have people from Australia this week. They might not be from specific festivals, but they can certainly direct you and tell you who to contact. But again, because of the sustainability agenda, a lot of the Australian festivals do tend to network and circulate work between them and New Zealand. Also, for the contemporary dance sector, we do have in the Near East and North Africa, we do have a contemporary dance circuit now, where the festival in Beirut, Palestine, Jordan, are all linked up, which makes touring along that circuit much more easy. But just to be aware that sustainability and carbon footprint is very important to us as an organisation, and where possible, if you did approach us with an interest in a particular country, then that might help us, encourage us to try and interest another venue in another country in the same region to take your work. So again, I think let's have those two-way conversations. You'll be surprised what we can do together. I think that's probably all I need to tell you about Edinburgh, except that it's every 2 years, and we will be starting to galvanise our processes round about this time, round about December, October, November, December 2012. So that is a very good time for you to make contact with us. I would suggest that after Decibel, we are in regular contact, that you tell us about your next production and your next production. Don't be disheartened if we can't come out to see the next production. Don't completely give up on us. There are only 4 members of the team trying to see work across the whole of the UK and Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales as well. But keep getting in touch, and we will try to see your work as soon as possible. So by October, November, December next year is when we start thinking about the showcase. And that's when we will send an email to all the artists and companies that we have a relationship with, which is why we should have this relationship from next week. We should start it. We will be anxious to find out what you're doing, what you're touring, whether you're going to Edinburgh in 2013. And then the team in London will be in the business of getting out to see your work and to assess it and to see if it's a piece of work that we would like to include in our showcase. So that is what we can do for you. So the showcase is our, if you like, it's our major piece of work every 2 years. But for the rest of the year, we're also building and developing programs with our arts partners across the world. This word partner, I don't just mean my opposite number across the world. The British Council doesn't have a lot of money for our activity, so it is essential that we work with partners, being festivals or people who program venues or people who work at organisations, because we generally share the budgets together. So just so that you know the distinction. Let me see how we're doing. I should have made this announcement at the very beginning, actually, but I'm going to stop at about 1:45 and then allow for questions from the floor. But there's also another show starting at 2 o'clock, so if anyone wants to make their way to that show, I really don't mind. And also, if you do ask questions, put your hand up and we'll make sure that we get a microphone to you before you start your question. Now, there's a lot of nuts and bolts that you as artists need to do to get yourself business ready. And for those of you that have heard Andrew deliver this talk before, I do apologise because I'm going to cover some of that ground, but I think it's worth hearing it again. I think it's just very important that you are aware that, you know, there may not be instant take-up on your work this week. Promoters will think about it. They'll be designing their programs over the next 6 to 12 months. And certainly we will be positioning some of the work that we see this week into people's minds. And as we develop programs, we will be including it as well. So we will be at touch in the future. I think it's important that you spend a little bit of time looking at your website and your marketing materials. Sometimes I've actually looked at companies' websites and they actually don't tell me any information at all. The website is the first port of call for an international promoter. It's absolutely important that you get that right. So just have a look at it. The sort of things that people, they'll want to know a little bit about your background. It'll be important that you tell them about the type of work that your company is all about, your style of work and the issues and some of your past work. Clearly, you need to have somewhere on the site where people can see your future productions. And this is the bit sometimes that I don't see. If I'm a promoter in Sweden and I'm looking on your site and I can see that you've got a piece of work that's ready and is touring, I sometimes can't see your tour itinerary. So I can't see where in the world you are. So if I see that you're in Norway, I know that that's a great opportunity to have a conversation with you. So as well as your future touring productions, please have a little think that what would you want to see? You'd want to see the work, you'd want to see the tech specs, you might not want to put the cost of the fee there because that's something that you can negotiate on. You might want to, in fairness, have a from and a to range, but you just need to be aware that a lot of promoters, depending on their financial situation, will want to negotiate. Just to give you an example, there's a couple of websites which I think are pretty good, and Lone Twin is one on the drama side, and Canduco Dance Company is another. So do have a look at those. They seem to, you know, they seem to have it right. All the things that I would be looking for are there. Plus brief biographies. I don't mean extended essays. I just mean a snappy paragraph. It's very important that you actually think about what your company can offer, not just the work, but your collective team. Quite often the technicians don't get a look in. But actually, they've got some fantastic skills, lighting and sound. Again, speaking from my personal experience, we've just had a 2-year program in the Arab world with lighting and sound workshops, building up the infrastructure in some of these fabulous buildings where the technicians don't have the skills to operate the fantastic equipment that was put in the fantastic building at the outset. And this is the same in East Asia. You know, the fantastic cultural centres are built, but sometimes the internal structure isn't quite at the same level. So your technicians have absolutely valuable skills. So I would sit down with your team and I'd find out what the skills are for your entire team. And I would put it up in your website. It's an absolute unique selling point. You're selling yourself short. Also, ask yourself, do any of your colleagues, do you lecture in colleges or university or in the community? Put that on your website, because quite some festivals, some venues are linked to universities, and they'd be very interested in knowing that some of your team members have those academic links, because they might want to encourage a residency or a workshop program with the students, which inevitably become the audience for their spaces and their festivals in the future. So sit down with your team and find out what the collective unique selling points are, and make sure that you refer to these on your website. How long have we got? 5 minutes, dear. Very quickly then, international touring. The one word that comes up time and time again is flexibility. There are parts of the world where the venues will be state-of-the-art equipment, and everybody working within that structure will know their place. There are certain parts of the world where the technical equipment is not state-of-the-art. There are parts of the world where the technicians have their own union and they will not work the same hours as you do. They will down tools and have their lunch, and that's perfectly acceptable as long as you know about it. You've also got to, I think the word is just to be flexible here, and the job will get done. But the technical rider is very important, because if that equipment is not available, then they may need to hire in. Hiring in certain parts of the world costs an arm and a leg. And that might be the thing that breaks the bank and the invitation cannot go ahead. So just try to be flexible. Try to see if the technicians can work with the equipment at the venue. And just remember, in certain parts of the world, people earn in a year what you probably earn in a week. So I just think flexibility is very key. Also, when you're touring and you're looking at your freight at the outset, if you are thinking of international touring, do bear that in mind at the design stage, instead of 6 months or 8 months later having to redesign it for international touring. Also, please bear in mind that parts of the set can probably be built locally, and there's nothing to fear about local builds. In some parts of the world, South Asia particularly, carpentry skills are exquisite, and we've had companies tour where the set built overseas was far superior to the one that they used in the UK. If that is the case, I would always say to you, it's perfectly acceptable to ask for a recce, so that your technical team can go out, talk to the people building the set, get the right paint finish, the right nails, the right color, the right wood, the right conditions, because at the same time, they can be used for PR and marketing purposes. They can actually talk to the press, talk to the TV. They can help that festival director or the British Council in getting people interested in the production. There's a lot more technical stuff. I could be here for several hours, but over time we have developed this into about 10 sheets of paper, which I'm very happy to send to you. It's a sort of practical nuts and bolts of touring internationally. But I hope that gives you a bit of an insight as to the work of the British Council. And I hope that after this week, please do mob me and my colleagues who are here, because if we don't work with you already, then certainly we would like to talk to you and hear about your work. And I'd like to treat this as the start of a relationship this week. So that's 1:45. If I'm open to questions now, and the microphone is here if anyone wants to leave for their 2 o'clock show, that's perfectly acceptable as well. So, do we have any questions?
Firstly, I want to say that I personally have a great respect for the British Council. I was fortunate enough to be brought up, first of all, in the Sudan, and then in Nigeria, and even went to university at Ibadan. And so I've had experience living in Nigeria of excellent British Council work coming there. And what I'm now doing is I'm the program manager of the Bridport Arts Centre. And being aware of the excellence of African writing, I'm very interested indeed in bringing examples of that to the Bridport Arts Centre, and there's an immense interest in African work. I've recently had the Master Drummers of Africa came, and I also had the African Voices song cycle that was brought, both of which were extremely well attended. When I look for theatre of similar African origin to bring in, that would be a Wole Soyinka play or some such work. I'm talking about Wole Soyinka because I immediately know that it would need to be a major writer in order to be able to attract an audience. But if there were to be a possibility of a tour of something like that, it would be absolutely wonderful for us. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, does it seem appropriate to you that I'm talking to you as the Arts Council representative to say, can you imagine a way of facilitating that for a little 190-seater art centre on the south coast? I mean, I'm aware that we're a tiny place. We're not a festival, we're a tiny place, but it's something that I see we're not meeting that need in theatrical terms. So that's my question. Sorry it's so long.
Okay. It's quite a loaded question because when we've brought Arab work into the UK, it's been part of a project. Some of it's come out of a project that we've designed and delivered, particularly on the new writing side. When the Tunisian company came to Lift, that again, I think that kind of is this maybe sits more comfortably with your question. That was again part of a drive for us to take a delegation of people from UK festivals and venues to the Arab world, to a theatre festival, to look at theatre from across the region with the express intention of inviting some of that work back to the UK. So I think the question, what I would advise you to do is hook up with Ben Evans this week. Ben travelled to the Grahamstown Festival last year with Nadine, and I'm not really sure how those relationships or whether there'll be a possibility for a delegation to go to South Africa or East-West Africa and to look at work to bring it back to the UK. There seems to be something there that I think you should explore, whether maybe you should be part of a delegation to Africa to look for work to bring it back. That is the kind of mirror image example I can give of our work in the Near East, North Africa. So I think that's something that you should explore with Ben. He's not in this room. But he's very tall with glasses, and he's with the international delegation, and he's very evident around. I will introduce him to you if I see you in the same space. But that, I think my example in the Near East, North Africa is quite similar to that, and we made it happen through that channel.
That's terrific. I mean, I am aware that there are possibilities through the HUS project that's coming from Southeast England for a collective of theatres to collectively invite and support and start to manage a tour like that. We don't at the moment have that set up in the Southwest, and I'm very much hoping that I'll be able to talk to Adam Jen and the Arts Council about their supporting an initiative like that.
Yeah.
It does need, it can't be set up by
Yeah.
an individual theatre. It's too big an initiative.
You've got to remember that as the British Council, we're interested in promoting UK expertise internationally, but through some of our programs, mutuality is key, certainly in the Arab world. So you would need to explore that with Ben. Okay, but the example of the Arab world is a good one to quote to him. Any other questions? Microphone? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Debbie Galt, I'm working with Yabba Funk, and what I wanted to know is, because you mentioned Ben and the African interest, whether to develop work in Africa, whether you'd be, I mean this is music and you've been, it feels like you've been talking mostly about theatre, but anyway.
Yes, I do apologise, I was.
Yeah, would it be a good idea for experience and develop African art here to apply to work in an African context, or would it be better? Would you feel happier if they were then extending their culture somewhere else?
Sorry, could you just go through that question again?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I think, like, as African or African musicians here, or like from an African base.
From here in the
yes,
UK, yeah.
And they mix with, it's very diverse cultures in it, so they've actually, mixed the cultures here, so they'd be their experience then taking it elsewhere. And what I wondered was, would they do well in terms of the British Council's priorities or works? Would it be good for them, say, to work through Ben, and this applies to people from,
right?
It's like taking the same culture here to an African context, or would it be better for them to pitch somewhere else where their culture might not be so well known? I mean, and that would apply to, say, Indian artists or Spanish or whatever. Now,
if they're musicians, it wouldn't be Ben in this case, because Ben is in the drama and dance team. Yeah. It would be our music team, and I'm very happy for you to write to me, and I will pass it on to the appropriate music person. If the musicians have been resident in this country for, is it quite a long time? Yeah. It's quite a long time. Certainly one of the team should come and hear the music and talk to them.
If they're here today, they can come on Thursday to the...
No, I don't think there's anyone from the music team here this week, to be honest. It's mostly the drama and dance team. And that, I think, is a conversation that they could have. Again, if I parallel it, I have, in the last couple of weeks, been talking to a Hong Kong Chinese theatre director who's very much part of the UK scene, and is now performing in China. So there are parallels in our work, and but again, I think they'd need to see the group, and they'd need to hear the music, and they just need to talk to them a little bit about their different influences, whether their African music has been influenced by other music as well, and what kind of music it is, if you know what I mean. But certainly, if you'd like to direct any further queries to me personally, then I will bat that out to the music team.
Yeah, and we just, sorry, I'm taking...
But Africa is a priority at the moment.
Whether it's like culture with like culture in another, place, or whether you were looking for people to bring something very different to the country where that they might be working.
Sometimes it can be like culture, but where it's been influenced by British culture. That is something we would look at. I think if it was like culture to like culture, we might kind of look at that deeply. We might not support that as much as something else. But certainly, again, another example of my Arab project in the Arab world, the new writing from the Arab world went to the States, went to a third country. So we brought Arab new writing, which the British Council had supported and helped create, into the States. So that's a sort of bilateral example, a kind of new shape that's evolving. And that some of the work that we do shouldn't just be bilateral, but we should open it out, because we are an international organization and we can make that happen. But I think we need to look at that one a little bit more deeply. Did you have a question?
A few months ago, Prime Minister David Cameron went to India with a team to develop the arts and the business, and they had some memorandums signed up. Has there been any collaborations between the British Council and the government level? And are there the list of sponsors or directories of venues, promoters available with some information on them from the British Council or do we have to always go through the British Council to develop that international work?
No, you don't always have to go through the British Council. A lot of artists are invited to festivals and international venues direct, and they have nothing to do with the British Council. But generally speaking, I think it's quite interesting to flag up if you do get an invitation independently, because it might be something that we would like to be involved in. It might be a new partner. We might not know very much about you and your work, and we might think that what you're doing is very interesting and we'd like to use it and embrace it, work together in some way. On your question about lists of funding possibilities, I wish I had such a list. I could sell that 1 million times over. I think we do, as all of you do, we stumble across things and we try to make a list and we try to remember, where there are funding possibilities. There are some interesting funding possibilities in the EU, and I think I'm staring at the right person here. So the gentleman with the pink shirt, you should pursue him for the rest of the week. But some interesting funding strands in the EU, which maybe need to have 3 partners. It's something I need to get my head around, actually, because the British Council, like every other big institution in the UK, does get cut now and then. And so we are trying to make up the money that has been cut by looking to other funding streams and other sources of income.
Can I just take one very quick word? There is a particular EU funding strand which has a deadline next May, which is for European projects linking with South Africa. A particular strand and the year after it's a fund projects linking Europe and Australia and Canada. We're developing some brokering. Do I need this? We're developing some brokering initiatives to help build partnerships between, certainly for the Australia-Canada one. So if you're interested in that, just come and see me and I'll give you a card with some information about that. Okay, thank you. And just finally, before you gather up your coats and bags, just one very important thing that Andrew's asked me to mention. Obviously, Decibel is a great opportunity to meet and network. I've mentioned the Edinburgh Showcase. I've mentioned you getting on our radar so that we can keep in touch with each other. But other possibilities is the Made in Scotland Showcase every year. This is a new initiative. I think it's been going for a couple of years now. So any Scottish artists in particular should get in touch with Creative Scotland about being part of that showcase, which is within the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Also, many of you might be familiar of an initiative in the southeast of England called Caravan, which was a showcase of work attached to the Brighton Festival for artists from that part of the world. Andrew's asked me to say that for 2012 and 2014, Caravan is going to be a national showcase. It's not going to just be for artists from that particular catchment area. You should know that the next 2012 Caravan is 13 to 15 May, and this is the difficult thing. The closing date for your application is 10 o'clock on Monday, the 31st of October, so in a few weeks' time. So that's another showcase where I think, you should definitely get in touch with. Also, we have here Anne-Marie Crowther, who's from Panda. Anne-Marie, could you just remind us what Panda means? The Performing Arts Network and Development Agency. Right. Now, on the 27th of January, they're actually going to run a training day about international touring. And this is specifically for artists who work in the north. So that's another date for your calendar, and Anne-Marie is your major contact. So you can chase her for the next couple of days to hear more about that. So these are all sort of opportunities that I think you should exploit totally. And as I say, please, please do keep in touch with the team in London. Go through me. I'm Carol McFadden. And if any of you would like a copy of the more expansive presentation, then, you know, over the next few days, please give me your business cards, or if you've got time now, to give me your email address. Thank you.